Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Education's Fiscal Management Committee meeting. I'm Jeanette Dixon, the chair, and I would like to introduce my colleagues or have my colleagues introduce themselves.
Judy Daca, District 1.
Good morning, Pat O'Neill, District 3, member of the committee.
Great. Mr. Morella, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Dan Morella. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Finance.
And why don't we just go to everyone who's on Zoom? If you could introduce yourself, that would be great.
Good morning, I'm Lori Christina Webb. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Board of Education.
MJ Bergstresser, Supervisor of the Internal Audit Unit.
Rob Riley, Director of Financial Services.
Great.
Tom Clausing, I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Finance.
Danielle Sesky, Coordinator of Legislative Affairs for the Board of Education Office.
Aranza Labad, Executive Director in the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Schools.
Becky, would you like to introduce yourself?
Becca Gibson, Board of Education Office.
And Tony, I think you're the last one.
Yeah, it's Tony Tucci here, Budget Specialist for the Budget Unit.
Great, thank you all very much. It's nice to see everyone. We have not met since March 2nd, so we have a lot to talk about. So I would like to call this meeting of the Fiscal Management Committee to order. I guess we should have done that first. We are at the point where we have the agenda, which we need to amend to add a new item, 4.3, which deals with the Independent Activity Fund. Are my colleagues amenable to amending the agenda? Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Dockett, thank you very much. All righty. So we are ready for the informational summary from March 2nd. Do my colleagues have any questions about that?
Looks good.
Dr. Dockett?
I said no. Mm-mm.
No, okay, great. Yeah, I did have one question about the informational summary. The pension plan amendments, those went to the Board of Education and were voted on. So I wanted to know, since we had indicated that the staff should talk with the unions about, the committee discussed that the recommended changes would need to be presented to the MCPS employee organizations prior to the recommendations coming from the full board. The committee and staff also discussed the rehiring of retirees. How many people would be affected by some of these changes and when the pension changes would take effect. Could you, Mr. Morella, speak to that piece in terms of that going to the board? I don't know that we got any information or whether you were able to talk to the unions about the changes.
Yeah, Mr. Collette was able to, we reached out multiple times to all three associations. And if I recall correctly, we had briefings and discussions with two of them. Ultimately, we've had discussions with everybody, though, since it was passed and implemented. The implementation date was right after the vote for the board. And right now we're putting together the instructions and regulatory language to move forward formally. We're presenting, or we're going to have that language done very soon. It's with the outside attorneys now to review.
Okay, so what I would like to do is just send this procedure, whether we were correct in our procedure, to Mrs. O'Neill and her policy committee to let us know whether in fact we did follow procedure in terms of that information coming back to the Fiscal Management Committee and then the Fiscal Management Committee referring that item to the board for a vote. It seems that the board voted on that. It did not come back to the Fiscal Management Committee. So Pat, could you take that up with, or, look at the policies in terms of the committees and whether these items must come back to the committees of the board before they're referred? I would appreciate it if you could give us an update on that at the next meeting.
Okay, I think the next policy committee meeting isn't till October 22nd. So
that would be good. We're meeting after that. We're meeting again in November.
So I'm sure Ms. Webb and Ms. Gibson will note it for me.
Okay, great. Okay.
Will do.
Thank you very much. That was the only thing that I saw in the informational summary. So otherwise, the informational summary is approved. And so I would also like to just make a suggestion as we begin. One of the things that I found helpful in looking at all of the materials and being able to keep them in order for our committee meeting, and maybe this is something that our staff can do for us when they send us these materials, is, for example, to put the item number, which I have, up here in the corner in big numbers, so that we can keep it in order and not have to fiddle around to find it. But that's just a suggestion that they be put on these. I mean, we could probably do it ourselves to know what order we need to be in, but I think it would be very helpful to have the numbers of items up in big numbers up in the right-hand corner of our materials. Okay, so we are now ready for item number 3.1, the category 12 expenses. And I will turn it over to Mr. Morella.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. The category 12 expenses are, as you know, what we consider our fixed charges for the school system. The largest two of those fixed charges are the healthcare and the employee pensions. As I also know, you're well aware, we need to report to the county council twice, both the end of March and end of September, on the use of these funds. Right now, we're in the final approval path for getting that letter to the county council signed. We have it in draft form, and it's in the process now of being reviewed throughout the school system here up to Dr. Smith. What I'd like to do, if it's okay, is just do a brief explanation on each of these categories on the table and on the PowerPoint, starting with the active employee group insurance. In this case, the appropriated amount and the actual contributions, or the appropriation amount and the actual contributions, are the same. What we receive through the appropriation is what we contribute to the trust funds. The beginning balance of the trust fund this year was at $28.5 million for the active employees, and it ended the year at $31.5 million, an increase of about $3 million. Well, when the year started, we did not anticipate that trend. We thought that the balance would go down, and in working closely with our actuaries, contracted actuaries, Aon, it was determined that a lot of the reason why the balance went up instead of down was because of the COVID and a lot of the deferred health care that people were not going ahead and doing this year. What they were doing is, if you had like a knee surgery or something that you could put off, we found people are putting off those kinds of procedures to stay away from the hospitals during the COVID outbreak. So some of those expenses have gone reduced this year, but we fully anticipate that in the near future, we're going to get claims experience for those activities that did not occur this year. In working with Aon, we're also put together a plan that's going to have our balance between $15 and $20 million at the end in 2 years. And we believe that with our claims experience now and the rate setting we did, that in 2 years, our balance for the employee health benefits fund will be between $15 and $25 million. Also, I'm happy to report that it appears as if participation by MCPS employees in our wellness incentive programs continues to increase. So they're having a positive impact there. Next is the federal insurance contribution payments, the FICA payments. They relate directly to salaries we pay, and we have a variance of about $0.8 million, $800,000 this year from our initial estimate. That's because salaries varied slightly from where we went in the fiscal year with. That would have been July of 2019. Retirement is the dollars reflected in the retirements are the employer contributions to both the MCPS local pension and the statewide pension, along with the statewide administrative fee. Once again, the amount that is appropriated is what's budgeted is what we pay into the fund. Interesting that administration fee is larger than I had anticipated. It's about $2.9 million a year. And just to go back a bit, to remind everybody, in 2014, the board set in motion a plan that 80% of the ultimate pension payments would be funded. And that's a very healthy number. Since then, in 2020, the beginning of 2020, what I see is that the board has acted so that we try to take action so that the pension will be 90% funded. And that's going to take a bit of time because of some of the market downturns we've had over the last year, but the market is recovering well, and I expect we'll be able to get to that 90% if we stay on the plan that the board put in place last year. And we also want to make sure that we get to the 90% so that in the future, if there are these large spikes again, we'll be able to get through those times with sufficient resources to continue making full pension payments to all the retirees. The retiree group health insurance is once again the appropriation and the actual contributions are the same. So what we bring in, we send right back to the trust funds. The balance of the retiree health retirement fund was the balance of the retiree health fund was about $26.6 million at the beginning of the year and ended at $30.9 million at the end of the year for the same reason, the deferred health care that people were putting off until they felt safe to go to their doctors and to the hospitals. The next section is just our non-tax supported grants. That's the category 12, the fixed costs for the grants that came in. The risk management self-insurance, that is the self-insurance plan that we participate in, MCPS participates in, and it is a member of the organization. The largest dollar in the risk management fund is the compensation costs, workers' compensation costs. And there was no variance this year between what we estimated and what we spent. A good story here is the tuition reimbursement. We had an increase of about $400,000 in that category or in that cost. That's about a 10% increase, and that means that staff are going ahead and getting additional training, more training than we had anticipated. We view that as a good thing. Tuition reimbursement went up by about $400,000. The miscellaneous category is for primarily annual leave conversion and tuition forgiveness. And once again, that came in, it's a very small number and it came in similar to what we expected. So I'd be glad to, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you guys may have about any of these larger subcategories regarding category 12. And Tony, please, if I've missed something, jump in.
Okay. Pat, Judy?
No, I mean, just a comment, it wasn't just that people were putting off surgeries. Hospitals were not scheduling
Sure.
elective surgery, only really emergency. And I know, like knee replacements were, not being done. And, I think people now are scheduling and doctors are scheduling those surgeries, but obviously it's somewhat contingent upon, what the virus does in the greater community, whether that will still be possible. So, I think on a go forward basis, we need to mark it with an asterisk that this was COVID experience and, it will change.
My comment was only on the tuition reimbursement, and I think you covered that, Mr. Morella. People have time to take some of these classes, so they're doing that.
Yep.
So I have a couple of questions. One does relate to the tuition reimbursement. So if we go over the budget with that, where does that money come from? The additional $400,000?
It comes out somewhere else in the operating budget. So we have to find dollars somewhere else to cover those additional costs. Fund 1, our operating fund.
Right. So I'm just curious why that would be a practice to go over that.
Specifically, my interpretation is we didn't want to limit people's ability to go out and get the training when we're pushing for as much professional development as we can right now. So I don't think we wanted to limit, but that was not a decision that I made. So I can't say for sure if that were the reason, but I believe that we were encouraging as much professional development as we could over the summer and over the school year.
Okay. I'm just, curious about, living within the budget that we set and, going over. So likewise with the non-tax supported grants, that $3.6 million more. So where will that money go? Will it stay in that category? How does that work?
So that would be part of, at the end of the fiscal year, we are required to carry over $25 million into the next year so that we can pre-fund the first $25 million of the budget. We have to do that every year. So we receive that money in areas where we underspend, primarily in salaries and benefits when there's lapse and turnover throughout the year. But there's also other places where we could potentially underspend, this being one of them. So that becomes part of the $25 million we roll forward. And we always keep a small contingency in the balance for post-closing adjustments for the transactions throughout the year, such as if we had a contract that was $10 million and it's a time and materials contract potentially, and the vendor comes back and said time and materials was $10.5 million, we would have to come up with that extra $500,000. That's part of the year-end balance we also have. So we use that money to pre-fund the next year by the $25 million and come in for any kind of post-closing adjustments, which occur in every system and every organization after the year closes. After the books are shut down, there's still adjustments that need to take place for the previous year. So that money helped cover the $25 million moving forward and any post-closing adjustments.
I think it would be useful at our next meeting in November to share with the public, and I'm not sure that I understand it either, but why do we have to save money every year to fund the next year's budget? I don't think that we have time for a discussion for it today, but I think that would be, noteworthy to share with the public and also, with me as a board member. I've always wondered why, if we allocate funds for a specific year, that the students who are in schools during that time don't have the benefit of all of those funds. And so if we could maybe make that an agenda item for the next meeting, I think that would be helpful, in terms of understanding why we have to save money every year. Okay. Great.
I'd like to say something or ask something. Tuition reimbursement, you talked about it being $400,000 over. So that might be pulled from the $25 million that we have to carry over. And that wouldn't be, where are we getting from? So I think the worry is that it may come from resources for students, and if that's not true, we need to know that.
In an area where we've over budgeted, let's say, throughout the year, because the budget's a snapshot in time when you do the budget, and circumstances do change throughout the year. Sometimes to the good, sometimes to the bad. Where we've had resources that are freed up throughout the year is where we would take those resources for the overage there. But the budget, I know we live and breathe by the numbers in the budget, and it's very important that we do that. Circumstances do change through the year for new needs or needs that go away, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We used to get,
I'm sorry.
maybe we do, the monthly spending, for
Yep.
each category. And
Yep.
there are some places where they are underspending in those categories. So that's where some of the money is. Okay.
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
the FinMon reports we do monthly and send to you guys. That's where it comes. That's where it would be identified. Yes. I'm going to close my
So
window. We
generally
have a
speaking-
lawnmower here.
With category 12, if we do go over in tuition reimbursement, we look to find savings within that particular category. And for the most part, we usually have those savings within the FICA account because of lapse and turnover savings. Generally speaking, we don't always, we always have vacancies throughout the course of a given year. So we generate surplus in our FICA, which you can see we have about 800,000 there. So we'll use that surplus in that particular account to cover a deficit that we might incur in tuition reimbursement. So that's where some of the savings we would use to cover an over expenditure in an account.
The other piece, and Jeanette, I just want to point out, while 25 million, certainly we need to make sure we have all the necessary teachers, et cetera. We would be in a terrible pickle if we overspent on our budget and ran a deficit in this year's budget. And I note that like Howard County for a while had a deficit in their health care. I mean, a huge deficit. And the strain that it put on their operating budget on a go forward basis was a problem. I mean, in a $2.8 billion budget, we're not going to end up zeroing out everything. And in some years, we've overspent on, say, non-public placements and special education or other, certainly I imagine in our budget this year, we're saving in fuel for the buses because the buses are not running every day. But, we don't want to come in absolutely zero or,
Right.
in a hole, say 40 million in a hole, because under law, we can't do that. So, 25 million, and I suspect that actually, the percolating in the county executive and county council's mind is thinking about a larger contribution toward next year's budget because they are, talking about the economic impact of COVID on the budget. So, yeah, we certainly need to hire all the staff we need. And further on the tuition reimbursement, I guess it would be good to see what sorts of checks and balances are in place for the approval process on what courses people are taking. I know that there are, requirements, but, we want it germane to their professional work.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if we all got her email last night, but I did hear from a teacher who hadn't received her tuition reimbursement, and was concerned about that. And certainly I don't, agree that we should run any deficits, but I do feel it would be interesting to understand how we get to, okay, well, we need to save 25 million out of this year's budget for next year's budget. And I do think that folks, who have to obviously maintain a budget in running their households, would like to, just understand how all that works. And I guess kind of what I call the fluidity that you mentioned, Dan, in terms of, sometimes we underspend, sometimes we overspend, and, they zero each other out. But I do think that, keeping tabs on that, and at a certain point, whether the decision is made that there are just no more funds available here, whether that's a good practice. But I do think that a discussion about that, would be worthwhile, and how is that 25 million figure reached that, we need to save, or, however that works. But yeah, I do, Pat, believe in saving for a rainy day, and certainly would not be in favor of, I'd be horrified if we had a deficit. But students come and students graduate, and, have they had the benefit of all that we can give if, we're doing that? Okay, so we are ready now to move on to 4.1, the Central Investment Fund.
And that'll be Mr. Riley presenting for us.
Okay.
Good morning, good morning, committee members. There's a PowerPoint associated with this. Hey, just to jump into, before we start this, to give you a background on the 25 million, since that came up. So to give you some context to that, all but 2 of the LEAs in Maryland do have carryover funds, or funds that they assign for the next year. And part of that is related to the fact that we don't, you were talking about, Ms. Dixon, a rainy day fund. So all counties and most governments in the United States have this rainy day fund, but school districts don't. So the 25 million that we roll over into the next amount, that's partly a cushion to prevent us from going to negative. And we mentioned negative as well, too. So the state won't allow us to go negative. In fact, if we ever run into an occasion where our operating fund goes negative, within COMAR, there's actually rules in there that they can withhold our funding. Now, hopefully that would never happen, but we take extra caution to make sure that that doesn't happen. So just to give you an idea, and we can discuss this at the next meeting when we go over the CAFR, that after we take out that 25 million for the next year, our unassigned fund balance we're down to $3 million. So 3 million on a $2.5 billion budget. We really are running a tight ship. So just a little context on that. So, but like you mentioned, it really warrants further discussion, but I just wanted to let you know the context of that 25 million and the purpose of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. So going back to CIF, so these are the operating fund investment policy objectives, and our CIF, we kind of, last year we kind of had the discussion, we talked about both, and both policy objectives are pretty much the same. And the items here, legality, safety of principle, liquidity, and maximum return, in my mind, are the priorities as well, too. So for instance, legality, we aren't going to invest the operating fund or the CIF for that matter in anything that's illegal, obviously. And that goes hand in hand with safety of principle too. The reason being that we don't want to lose any of our hard-earned funds that the schools have acquired and that we get through the operating fund. The next issue is liquidity. So liquidity plays an important factor in both the operating fund as well as the CIF. From the operating fund perspective, you all know that payroll makes up 85 to 90% of our budget. So we don't want to put funds away and then not have them available to pay for payroll. So liquidity is very important in the operating fund as well as the CIF. So we've made conscious efforts to get the schools to move money from their operating funds into the CIF, the centralized investment fund, in order to gain interest. But just the way that the operating fund has to worry about paying their bills, so do the schools. So we don't want to get into a situation where a school's checking account goes negative because they were they put too much into the CIF fund. And then the last policy objective is maximum return. So this one we talked about extensively last year at this time because we were in the operating fund, we were actually getting zero interest a few years back. And then in the CIF, the returns were rather small. So if we move to the next slide, it should look a little familiar as well too, because the first 3 columns are what we discussed last year. And everything looked pretty rosy. We went from, like I said, 0 to 1.2 million in the operating fund. And that actually was a new source of revenue for us that enabled us to spend some of that money or budget some of that money for instructional needs. So that was very good. And on the CIF side, we went from 42,000 to 127,000. And again, these are, this is another revenue fund for schools that they can use for school purposes. So all good news up to that point. But I don't know if you recall, Ms. Dixon, but you did kind of give me walking orders at the end of the last meeting, and you were looking to see if we could possibly double the number for the CIF with good intentions, because obviously the more money in the CIF, the more money for the schools. So I'm always up for a challenge. So I did take that to heart, and I immediately started meeting with the financial agents within the schools. And we did make a conscious effort to get more money to go from the operating funds into the CIF. And we did see that trend. In fact, our monthly, our quarterly, we look at this quarterly with the CIF committee. We actually went from 25,000 per quarter to all the way up to 40,000 per quarter. And then, as you know, COVID hit. So that's the last column there. So I really should have provided you with a projected 6/30/21, because if you look in 6/30/20, it actually doesn't look too bad. Now, obviously, the interest rates took a steep downfall from 1.41 to 0.25 and from 2.39 to 0.25. But as you can see, the CIF interest held steady, as well as the operating fund. And that is because we did good cash management throughout the year. And those what you're seeing there was really through 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, it was really a bust. And unfortunately, looking forward to next year, the CIF, we've actually budgeted for half of what we earned. And that's going to be a struggle just to get that based on this interest rate. Because as you know, the total interest earnings, it not only relies on the amount of the money that we kind of incentivize the schools to put in, it also is a function of the duration, how long that lasts. But the big other key factor is the interest rate. And as you can see at 0.25%, it's going to be difficult to get the kind of interest dollars that we've gotten in years past. So that's the story on interest. I don't know if you have any questions on what we're showing here.
Okay. Judy, Pat, questions?
The principal is the entire budget. Is that what we're talking about? All these categories will add up to the 2.9 billion? No, that's what I'm getting it. No.
In this, we're just focusing on interest earnings for the operating fund. For the general fund as well as the CIF.
Okay. Oh, okay.
On the general fund side, we receive money from the county, but we keep it as invested as long as possible until we need the cash for outlays for salaries or contracts. So until we need to pull the money out of the account, we keep it invested. And then we try to make sure that we don't overdraw out so that we lose interest. Rob does a really good job in being able to pull out the amount we need for the month so that we're not sitting on cash, not earning any interest. At least we're getting the 0.25% as long as possible. It's a cash flow type issue.
Okay, the 0.25% is on what amount of money?
It's on the amount of money on 2 different things. The money sitting in the CIF, which is what the schools invest above their IAF.
I know you said that already before.
And then the other one is the money we receive from the county, because we receive money scheduled throughout the year to go and use for our payroll and for contracts. And they give us an amount each month. And if we don't need to use that full amount that month, we keep it invested. So that
I understand that. You said that twice, but I just was looking for a monetary figure, but maybe that's not, because I know it's different every year, but it would just be nice to know, like.
Yeah, Judy, I think, wants to know how much is in the central investment fund.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's 10 million. It ended right around $10 million. So in other words, we earned 125,000 on the 10 million. And in relative to what Mr. Morella was speaking about, we earned 1.4 on our idle cash, or cash that's that we have to keep available for payroll, but we can invest. So that on any given day, we have anywhere between $40 million and $80 million idle that we can kind of put into these liquid investment opportunities.
Thank you. That is what I wanted to know.
Okay. Pat?
No, just from a historical and point of view, I do believe that we almost, like I say, we need an asterisk. This is the COVID period because, 2-3 years from now, we'll say, we may say, what happened? Why this trend? I think this is a issue that everybody with any kind of investments or 401k accounts, is worrying and grappling with. So, thank you for managing us as well as you can.
Right. So I'm just curious in terms of, let's say, do you do certificates of deposit for the CIF?
No, that's a good point. And you had raised that question last year. And at the time, the interest that we were earning by using these other opportunities was higher. But that is something that we can look into. The only issue with CDs, you might get a better interest rate, though you are, you lose a little bit of liquidity. So we'd have to have a circumstance where the school has enough money that they can put aside for at least 6 months to a year. And that's not always the case. Some of the larger high schools can do that. And
right.
In fact, some of them do. Some of them do
right.
do the CDs. But you're right. That's something I can look into, that possibly we can do more CDs for the schools that have that available.
Right. Yeah, I really think, Robert, it's like a must because, some of these funds are quite hefty in the CIF. And, if you locked it in for like a year, you still have other funds. I obviously wouldn't take all of the money, the 10 million out of the CIF and invested, but, looking at maybe how much schools pull out of the CIF every year, you could then take half of what they don't use and invest it in, a certificate of deposit. I know that, and I don't know. It seems that I think with some of this, the banks have taken advantage a little bit as well, because I don't think that they're losing all that money. So I just think that that's something that needs further work in terms of us being a little more aggressive with the certificates of deposit and things like that as well. I mean, not that I'm any great financial whiz, but, I think it was about a year ago, I was able to lock in a certificate of deposit for over 2% for a year, or actually 13 months. And, I think in the scheme of things and in terms of, what principals think about, and knowing from my own experience as a high school principal, I rarely took money out of the central investment fund so that, it could stay there and you can get a greater return. It just seems that we need, to be maybe a little more aggressive in trying to earn some more funds for the schools, for the students, because they always need things. They always do. Okay.
I think there's a danger with CDs, at least for personal. If you put money in a CD and you suddenly have a need for it, then you pay a penalty, and it's pretty hefty.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I mean, you don't put it in if I only put it in.
You don't know that you're going to need it. You don't
Yeah,
know that
well-
you're going to need it. And you have this money here that should be getting interest. You put it in, the next week, whenever, within that term. So I think that can be a little bit dangerous.
Well, I think you have to look at your entire financial picture and see, your sources of income and,
Of course.
yeah.
You wouldn't have money
Right.
for a CD if you didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so I'm just, making that point that I think that we can do better. And, shopping around for these things. You even see in the papers today that there are some advertisements for certificates of deposit at 2%. They're always in the Washington Post as well. But anyway, I leave that to you. Thank you for what we did earn on behalf of schools. And thank you for looking into it, as well. Okay, if there aren't any more questions about that, we are ready for 4.2, the funding for after-school activities.
So good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to bring this item back to the Fiscal Management Committee. I think the last time I presented on this topic, it might have been at the September meeting with the promise to come back and provide an update. So just as a review for everyone, this item is related to the February 2019 decision of the board to approve, I think it was $100,000 in the FY20 operating budget, specifically to support extracurricular activities in Focus Elementary as well as middle schools. And the funds were to be allocated for stipends, contractual services, including transportation that might have been needed to support the after-school activities. And they could be used for new and existing extracurricular programs to increase opportunities for student engagement, socialization, creativity, and just to motivate academic and social emotional well-being. When we presented this information in September, what I shared at that time was that the middle schools that we had looked at offering the opportunity to, there were, I believe, 20 middle schools. It ended up being 10 that took it upon themselves to participate and request funds. Of those 10, well, let me back up. All middle schools also receive achievement-focused extracurricular programming money, and this additional $50,000 would supplant for those schools and for schools who wanted to do a little bit extra. For the elementary schools, there was no such pot of money available to them. And working from the original board request around Focus Elementary Schools, we had reached out to, I believe, 15 schools after we presented in September, and the desire was to make sure we maximized the number of schools. We reached back out to schools and said, we have funds available. If there's anyone interested, these are the parameters around which we would like to see money used. We had additional schools to then request. So at the end of that time, which took us into around December, we ended up with 10 middle schools and around 16 elementary schools who submitted proposals and plans around how they would like to use the money to provide more enrichment programs for their students. And I just want to give you an update that, and I know I shared some of this prior, some of the challenges we had because we really wanted to maximize this opportunity, and we understood the board's desire was to provide these enrichments. Before COVID-19, one of the challenges that we were facing with schools being able to stand up programs were the capacity of staff and students in the building. Some of the schools, who we reached out to, who we went back to, indicated that they had other partnerships, they had grants, they had other programs. They were running sometimes, upwards of 15 programs in their building already, so they didn't even have the space to add more to that. Some of the other concerns were that some of the other enrichment programs that they were partnered with were able to pay staff at a higher rate, because we have a negotiated rate that we can pay staff when they're participating in these programs. And so frankly, staff were being able to get paid more doing some of the other enrichment programs that they would if they were to initiate something else. And while we were able to get, the schools that were able to support these programs in their schools, many of them planned for their activities for the spring. Some started in the fall and winter, but many of them planned for activities in the spring. Some of the things they were planning on were, like the academic things like literature club and math club, and there were foreign language and culture clubs. But there are also these health and fitness and sports activities. There were excursions like Destination Imagination and some conferences with robotics and things that had been planned for the spring. And then COVID hit in March, which put, we had to shift from a face-to-face in-person environment. And along with that, it was how do we deliver things safely? We were focused primarily on the academic instructional day, and some of these extra enrichment activities, frankly, became the thing that if we can get to that, it'll be important. We also had limitations with some of the third-party partners that the schools had arranged to work with because of our shift to the virtual environment and our desire to make sure that we were continuing to maintain safety for students. We couldn't do the in-person aspect of it, and we were negotiating, which we're still working on now in this year. What are the parameters that when we are engaging with third-party partners, that we're creating a safe environment for that in the virtual environment? How do we set up, for some things we've set up Zoom accounts where when teachers want to bring in a third-party partner, a guest speaker, that we have a safe way to have them come in a monitored environment. So those are some of the challenges that we've encountered. Certainly this funding ended, at the end of June, but the impact began before that as we went into that March season to the end of the year, where some of the money that had been planned for, had been negotiated around, we were not able to actually see that translate into benefit for students. So I'll stop there for any questions.
Okay. Pat, Judy?
Just an observation. I think that because this was a board initiated item that was added into the budget, I think it would be helpful to have a summary of the challenges and opportunities pre-COVID for the rest of the board members as we build next year's budget. Because, obviously, if this is not a sum of money that, sort of globally has benefit, in the best of all worlds, in the brick and mortar environment, if there are other opportunities and challenges that, such as the stipend rates that are provided by other entities or, grant making. I know the Education Foundation has after school activity grants that are given that teachers apply for. So I think it would be good to have a summary of the challenges and opportunities, noting the pre-COVID existence, so that if board members want, in building next year, the next budget, it have some point of reference in that conversation.
Right. Judy? No questions from Judy? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I agree, Pat. I think that that summary would be very good. If I remember correctly, I think one of the problems with the use of these funds was that the board was not necessarily as specific as we probably could have been in terms of, who the targets were for those funds. Because as I remember, I think the Office of School, I think they're the Teaching and Learning Office now, put some parameters on in terms of who could apply for these funds that I think were not helpful in terms of, schools reaching out to use these funds for programs. And so I think going forward, if next year, and I know this was an interest for Brenda Wolf as well, in the East County, and that was my interest as well, that schools in the East County didn't have the funds to run after-school programs. And so it was interesting to see which schools, signed up for this. So I don't think the thought was to limit, who could apply and so forth, or who had interest initially. And so I would hope that if the board decides to do this again, that, they will share a summary of what the challenges were and, make very clear, the idea is that we want to encourage schools. And especially as you look at the IAF accounts, some of these are very, very low. And, maybe that would be a good starting point, for schools to be invited if it's thought that we need to do that. So thank you, Aranza. I appreciate that update. And this was another COVID casualty. And, I think.
Oh, well, I just thought of my concern when you mentioned, Aranza, that people made choices about involving themselves in it having to do with stipend, and that's something we need to look at.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for the update. And we are now ready for 4.3, which is the Independent Activity Fund. I guess we're getting an update. I found these figures fascinating, and to look at the different schools, and how much money they have in, their independent, their IAF and activity fund. And, and I noted, the schools that, let me let you go ahead and, and share. But there are some schools that dispersed more money than they took in as well. And, so I'll let you go ahead and address that.
Okay. Good morning, committee. So I am here to address the annual report of the Independent Activity Funds for fiscal year 2020. I did have a PowerPoint. I don't know where that is. Is there a PowerPoint for the annual report? Oh, no. That's not my PowerPoint.
MJ, I think what's going on is the item we're discussing now is shown as 6.2 on the updated agenda.
Yeah, they wanted to move it.
So it's probably in the order of the agenda. So it's probably later in the presentations.
So it's up to the committee. Do you want to wait till we get to 6? Do you want me to go over it without?
Well, 6.2 is the internal audit work plan.
And 6.1 is the annual report.
Ms. Dixon, Becky sent out a new agenda this morning. that.
Well, I had done all
Apologize.
this work last night, so I hadn't seen that this morning. So whatever's easiest for you, MJ.
I have no problem going over the annual report without the, oh, wait, there we go, magic. Okay, so I will report on the fiscal year 2020 annual report. Go to the next slide. So we break out the responsibilities of the internal audit unit into 5 broad categories. The first one is management and coordination of external audits. The second is financial and compliance audits and reporting. The third is operational audits. The fourth is assistance to managers and staff. And then the last is investigations. And I will go over each of these 5 categories. Next. So the first category is management and coordination with external audits. So each year, MCPS is required to have an audit of its financial transactions and accounts. And the internal audit unit, we coordinate that contract with the outside auditors and assist the auditors with this annual audit of MCPS's basic financial statements. The internal audit unit coordinates and assists different groups of auditors from various Maryland state offices as well. We work with the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland Public School Construction Program, and the outside legislative auditors. And they come at various times. The next category is the financial and compliance audits. So financial and compliance audits are made to determine whether internal controls and accountability for assets and liabilities are adequate, whether financial reports are complete and accurate, and whether financial and administrative operations comply with all of MCPS policies, regulations, and procedures. During 2020, FY 2020, we were only able to conduct 78 school audits. This number was due to COVID and us not being able to get out to schools for 3 months. We were able, right before COVID hit and we were told we could not get into schools, to go out and get some records. So we were able to continue to work, but we obviously did not get the audits done that we would have typically. So as of June 30, 2020, the total funds held by all schools, which is 208 schools and departments, was approximately $15.3 million. Schools collected approximately $25.6 million and dispersed approximately $25.3 million. We audited the CIF annually, and as of June 20th, the interest rate was, as Rob had indicated, was down from 1.4% to actually 0.60%. And then in August 1st, it dropped to the 0.25%. But as of June 30th, it was 0.60%. And we had approximately $10 million from 200 schools. So we have 208 total, and we've been working with the other 8. Obviously, some have just opened and they had no money to invest, but every time we do an audit, we do look at those schools and we are encouraging them to put money into the CIF to earn some money for those schools. At the end of each fiscal year, we obtain and consolidate the financial statements of every single school, and we include that into the MCPS Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which we call the CAFR. And the next slide is just a chart that talks about the independent activity funds and its receipts versus disbursements. And I've broken it down into high schools, middle schools, elementary, and the specials. So these numbers are way down from last year, mostly due to COVID, where pretty much April, May, and June, we had no funds coming in, and some funds still going out, but the funds coming in. And the schools also had to do a lot of refunds this year for the field trips that were canceled. So as you can see, high schools brought in around 17 million and dispersed about 16.3 million. The middle schools they brought in about 4.4 million, but dispersed about 4.7 million. Elementaries brought in about 3.8 million and dispersed about 4 million. And then the specials, about 85,500 came in and about 94.8 came out. So you can see the difference of how much more high school spend in consideration to middle and elementary and specials. Next slide, I break out high schools receipts versus disbursements. So these are all 25 high schools, and you can see the red is receipts and the greenish gray is disbursements. So some bring in more than they disperse. Some are very, very even. And then we have some that did disperse more than they brought in. And again, some of this could be timing. They may have paid a lot of bills and had money that they were due. Some schools were due very large refunds from some of these travel companies that they did not get until August. So it's a variety of issues and reasons why some would have dispersed more than they had brought in. The next slide is the same idea. It's middle schools receipts versus disbursements, and it's all of our middle schools. And as you can see, you know, it varies from school to school. Some spend a lot more money than other schools, and it's all what they have to spend. And a lot of the middle schools spent more than what they brought in. And again, that could be a timing issue. It really is a school by school basis. Any questions on any of these slides where we do receipts versus disbursements before I move on?
Pat or Judy, do you have questions about the IAF?
No, I just think it's interesting that some schools took in more than they used. Whitman, very interesting. But yeah, maybe because it is a snapshot in time and they haven't gotten all their expenditures.
And a lot of schools do a lot more fundraising. Mm-hmm. They might have more athletic money coming in, and it really just varies. If some schools do very large, you know, music and drama productions, and that generates a lot of money for the school. The next slide is about the operational audits that we do.
Well, don't go so quickly.
Okay.
I didn't know whether Pat had questions. I generally like, as the, you know, chair, to have the other members speak first. But if she doesn't have anything,
no,
then,
I'm fine.
You know, okay, yeah. So my question is, just in terms of the IAF, do principals at all of the schools see this information and also, you know, the graphs as well, so that they can see, you know, what other schools are doing? Or, you know, let's say they are at one of the schools where they dispersed more than they took in. You know, I think that might be helpful. Do they see all of this information?
So each individual school gets reports every month from their financial agent, and it breaks down in very detail, as you remember from being a principal, all the accounts. As far as this annual report, I am not sure if this goes to principals. That I can't answer to.
Right. Well, it's public knowledge now, correct?
Yes.
And I think it would really be helpful if they were able to see the information as well. You know, I think that, you know, obviously some principals are very, very good at managing the funds. Some, you know, probably need some assistance with it. But I think that it would be useful information to disseminate to them as well. And, you know, I will, you know, just to defer to the COVID argument, you know, about a lot of, you know, these figures, you know, a little bit further on, and I'm not sure where that would be appropriate, but I'm curious also about, the losses that we suffered in terms of materials that weren't returned, books, uniforms, things like that as well. Do we have any information on, I know that we took a hit on that, but I do think it would be good to disseminate this information to all principals so that they can learn from it, I think, as well, which I think is appropriate. Okay.
I do have a comment. This is going to be an extraordinarily difficult year. Like other than the senior portraits,
right.
I mean, to my knowledge, we're not doing individual student photographs. There won't be the big fall musical productions that generate some funds and expenditures as well. And certainly for this fall and this winter season of athletics, there's not,
right.
We're not bringing in gate receipts. So, I mean,
right.
There will be, certainly a difficult year. It's what's in there is not going to grow.
Right. Yeah. And that's understood because, there might not be prom or, a senior banquet and all sorts of things like that as well. But I do think that, it's instructive to see, how other schools are doing,
right.
Compared to, what you're doing. And, and as I said, some of these accounts are very, low, and then some are very high. And so I'll just leave it at that, as well. Okay, MJ, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll move on to the operational audits that we do. So we do payroll audits, we audit the cell tower, and we audit student parking. And as you know, payroll is one of the major expenses for MCPS, and the objective of our audit is to determine whether the hours of time worked and the leave taken have been properly recorded, approved, and reported as prescribed in the MCPS regulations. Now, during our audits, we did find various issues, and we worked with schools to help improve them, and help prove their processes for reporting leave and knowing when people are in and out of the offices. And we've worked with the Employee and Retirement Service to implement better controls. So we do try to help when we do a payroll audit. We were actually lucky enough right as COVID hit to go get payroll records from 4 schools. So we actually got more payroll audits done this year than we typically would have. And I think it's a good idea to help them, with their procedures and processes, because it is a large budget item and we want to make sure that everything's being reported properly. We do look at the cell tower audit every year. We just make sure that everything, the sharing formula is correct. And then we look at student parking. And we just analyze what was given to the schools, what was returned, and the difference should be the parking permits that were sold. And the next slide talks about the assistance to managers and staff. So every year or every year and a half, I update the financial manuals that deal with the IAF, which would be Chapter 7, which is cash handling, and Chapter 20, which is the IAF. I also help with Chapter 6, which is ethics and audit. Also, every year we do an inventory testing of the 5 bus depots to make sure that their inventory testing is accurate. I work with our software vendor, which is TRA Kev Group right now, and we work on the software updates for that school finance accounting program. Other assistants, I also work with the school finance training, and I sit in on part 1 and part 2 as a consultant, and I help update the training papers that we have, all the handouts and the PowerPoints. We do financial agent support. Anytime we have a new financial agent, they can contact us with questions, anything that an office needs, any kind of assistance that we can provide is what we try to do. And then the last one is investigations. So schools and office can request an audit due to financial or payroll concerns. The internal audit would conduct an audit and report the findings. Sometimes if it's warranted, we have to contact the Department of Compliance and Investigation to do a more in-depth investigation. And we do report the results to the superintendent of Montgomery County Public Schools. Last year, we conducted 4 audits that were outside our normal scope. And reported the results to the requesters. None of these audits resulted in any further investigation. We also have an anonymous hotline, which is maintained by Lighthouse Services, and we had 14 complaints that came through that hotline in FY 2020, and we worked with the Department of Compliance. We did it individually, Department of Compliance did it individually, or we worked jointly together to look into it. It was determined that most of these complaints could have been resolved directly by management or were the result of the complainant having insufficient knowledge of an issue prior to filing a report. Only one resulted in an audit, and the official audit report was provided to the stakeholders. Any questions on any of these 5 categories that we've gone over?
Pat or Judy? No? Yeah.
No questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have one question. And thank you for the written report that came with this as well. And I meant to ask this when we're looking at the IAF piece as well. So the Edison High School of Technology, now that has been merged with Wheaton. Is that correct?
Yes.
So those funds would be managed by the principal of Wheaton now?
She will be managing it, but we will continue to have 2 separate IAFs at this point. And both of Edison and Wheaton will have separate financial agents.
Okay.
But the principal will be the overseer of both of those funds.
Great. Okay. So that's good to know because I think the Wheaton funds are very well managed. So thanks for that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All righty. Does that conclude your report, MJ?
Yes, that's the end of the report for the annual report, and I'll wait till we get to 6 to do the work plan.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, so we're now ready for 5.1, the financial outlook for fiscal year 2021 and beyond. And we have one slide on that, but we received a fairly detailed memo from Dr. Smith to all members of the board on that. So Dan?
So like you mentioned, we sent you guys a letter last week with some of the pressures being put on the system right now in 21 and what we anticipate having to deal with in 22. The slide deck that we sent here is a summarization of that letter. And if you would like, I can go through the slide deck quickly so that everybody can hear some of these factors that we're dealing with in the next 18 months budget. So next slide, please. So a lot of what we're dealing with right now is either directly or indirectly related to the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. And it has significant impacts on many, many different aspects of our budget. As the board would recall, when we were putting the finishing touches on our fiscal year 21 budget in May and June of this year, Dr. Smith set aside $58 million of our budget to help with continuity of learning, IT equipment, and professional development. And that was because since the method of education changed so directly, we needed to set aside funds to cover those 3 categories of spending. And if you recall, that was on top of us taking a $49 million cut because of the county council's funding us at the maintenance of effort level. So we were able to take the maintenance of effort level and reprogram $58 million before the budget was finalized by the county council. At that time, we had anticipated CARES Act grant resources of about $25 million. Since then, we've received an additional $35 million in CARES Act grants, and for fairly specific items that are on the next page when we get to the next page. But just as important, the pandemic is having a horrible impact on both state, local revenue. The revenue collection is way down, and that's going to have tremendous impact on our going forward. And there's a slide beyond this to describe that a little bit. So if you'd like, we can quickly go through the CARES Act funding we received. The first is, that's from the governor. It's about $1.75 million, primarily used for IT services and equipment. The second one, the ESSER grant, that was the original grant we anticipated receiving this fiscal year. And that is primarily for ESOL students, special education, and related IT equipment for those purposes. That money has a life until fiscal year, I think it's June 30th of 2022. So that money has life beyond this fiscal year. The next grant, technology, the $18,344,000 was a CARES Act grant that we received within the last month or so. We have been able to identify the $18 million, how we're going to spend it and beyond. So that was good work by Pete Chevanini and his team, because this grant runs out actually December 30th or 31st of this calendar year, and we need to have it booked and reported to the state by that time. The tutoring grant, the $13,241,000, that money was also a CARES Act grant, and that the purpose of that grant is to provide direct support to students beyond what the normal teaching supports would be, such as $8 million of this $13 million we spent over this past summer due to increased summer school activities that we had not done in the past, and they were related to COVID activities, some of the loss of learning because of kids not being in the brick and mortar for the last couple of months. And the broadband act, the broadband was something that I was actually fairly surprised to see. The purpose of the broadband was about $5 million statewide, and that was for rural areas that didn't get good broadband service. We put together an application and were awarded the $1.17 million. So that was a terrific boon on our part. Pete and his folks did a great job putting that together. And then the final GEAR Act, that was a CARES Act grant put together by the Office of Human Resources and Development. And the purpose of those dollars is for professional development based on COVID activities that we never anticipated. So it's similar to some of the other grants, but this was a competitive grant to accelerate some of the work we want to do, and we were able to get a portion of that accelerated grant. So that's the $59 million. In the center column, those are the equitable services, the amount we need to provide to the non-public schools out of these grants. You'll see a total of $2.17 million there. Over the last week or so, 2 weeks, there's been a federal judge who had a ruling on the spending or the allowable spending for the equitable services. And if her ruling stands, it'll change the number 2170 downward. There's difficulties in all that, as you would guess, because some of the money has already been spent and items have been delivered to some of the non-public schools. So we've been working through some of these issues over the last week or so. And I anticipate we're going to have a go forward position very, very soon that we'll share with you. The next slide is what I was mentioning earlier. Last fiscal year, the revenue for Montgomery County was reduced by about $47.7 million from what was anticipated and projected by the county, a direct relationship to COVID. And they're estimating that in 2021, the revenue will be down $192 million. The very concerning part there is the next bullet, where the terrible recession of 2007, which had years-long lasting impacts on all the county agencies, but very much for the school system, only decreased the revenue by $188 million. So we're going to surpass that fairly significantly over the next 12 months or so. Very concerning for all involved here. And that's something we need to consider as we go forward with our budget planning for fiscal year 22. In addition, we got notice from MSDE that they are contemplating, or actually have proposed, that state grant resources for 2021 are going to likely match or possibly match the same amounts as 2020. The impact on that for us would be about a $38.4 million reduction on current year state aid that we will not know about until at least January of this fiscal year. So it's very, very late in the year to try to find a way to save $38 million. So with every decision we're making now, we're contemplating the impact on a lower budget than we currently have by $38 million. And action taken by the state last fiscal year regarding the Kerwin legislation, the blueprint. Right now, if we do not receive additional legislative authority, we're going to be reduced Kerwin dollars next year by $27.4 million. So if we take the possible reductions here just from the state and local aid, without even taking into account numbers of students, we are in a position to far exceed, the reductions will far exceed the increase in CARES Act we got this year. And CARES Act is a one-time resource. It's nothing to be, we don't anticipate getting CARES Act money beyond this year. So we have significant shortfalls that we're going to have to deal with in the upcoming, 3 months when we put the budget together for fiscal year 22. Next slide is a discussion of right now, and this number could change in the next week or so, but right now, the K-12 student enrollment numbers down about 2,400 students. If we apply the factor that what we get from the state and from the local per student for education, we're down about another $38 to $39 million just on lower enrollment. And we don't know the final number, but we do know it's about almost 16,000 combined per student that will be down next year based on what the count is right now on September 30th. So we're very concerned about fewer students and how that's going to impact our overall budget next year. Also, we have concerns, and I know that I think all three of my friends on the board here were involved when we went below MOE a number of years ago. We're very concerned that if the revenue remains as low as projected or goes lower, that the county may try to go below the MOE. And there's 3 ways they can do that. They can first do a fiscal condition waiver, where the MOE requirements the reduced MOE would return the following year, and that's a request made by the county. The second one would be a recurring cost waiver, which is similar, but that would have multiple year impacts. But that would also need to be agreed to by the Montgomery County Board of Education. And if it has any impact on personnel costs, it would have to get the approval of our associations. And then the third is the rebasing. And that's it's only permissible after we would receive a fiscal conditioner waiver. And that would go on it's based on a 5-year average of how much Montgomery County receives versus how much is received in other LEAs throughout the state. It can be a 1%, 2%, or 3% reduction. And the 3% reduction you can see here is another $52.6 million. We don't know that's going to happen. We don't know if any of these are going to happen, but we just want to have them out there so that if it's considered, you would know what the potential impacts of such cuts would be. So in summary, we were able to pull $58 million or reprogram $58 million for our students in distance learning, and we received $59 million of CARE Act. That's the one-time resources. We know that there's a strong potential for the state aid to reduce by $38.4 million and Kerwin to dry up, another $27.4 million. We also know that there's going to be about a potential $35 to $36 million reduction based on enrollment, and that if we were to be rebased and it was approved and processed, we would face up to a $52.6 million reduction in our operating budget for fiscal year 22. I'll be glad to try and answer any questions you may have. I believe you received this letter from Sandy last week, midweek. And there's a lot here, and we can try to answer it, but I'm sure we'll have additional briefings on this letter going forward also for the full board.
Okay. Judy, Pat, questions?
No, just really an observation because there's much that is unknown. Certainly the fiscal impact is grim. Having been a board member through the last recession and lived through actually I went twice to the state board requesting waivers to the MOE law as it was written, and it has been amended since then. But, it's grim looking. And, these numbers could actually be worse. I mean, at the end of the day. So anything we can do now to be prudent, recognizing that, there's much that is unknown, but the fiscal outlook is not good either at the state or the local level. I believe in being realistic, and then you add on the lower student enrollment, and there are many reasons that can be. That will, all of that impacts really rough seas going forward. And the last recession resulted in implications that lasted for several years. And one might argue that where we are today, we had not come out of the impact of that recession and the rebasing because our class sizes are still too large. And, this is just going to be probably one of the most difficult budget cycles, I think, in my 20 years on the board.
Okay. Dr. Daka?
I just wanted to say I've experienced at least 2 recessions since I've been with the school system. And I remember one that was so serious that we had to limit the amount of paper that people use, and we had to turn the thermostats down. So I remember that. I hope we don't get to that point.
Right. I remember the paper. Yeah, right. Yeah. So one of the things that, and these are just comments as well, one of the things that I've been proud of is that given COVID-19, we haven't had to lay off, furlough employees. which I think we have been very fortunate in being able to do, especially as we look to see how, COVID-19 has affected our fellow citizens, a lot of whom have lost jobs, have not been able to pay their bills and, have not been able to pay their rent. And I think we have done yeoman's work in terms of, trying to support the food insecurity that a lot of our fellow citizens have experienced as well. And by the way, I don't advocate doing any of that, laying off or furloughs. I think we have, a great workforce. And certainly, let's say if you just took, those who transport our students, I think it would be horrible to have to start from scratch, hiring new bus drivers and things like that. So I've been really pleased at the way we reimagined duties for some of our employees. The one question I do have, though, is as people have retired and given COVID, have we been able to realize or reimagine, some of the jobs, and, I'll be a little honest. I do think that, we are overstaffed in the central office. I'm not in favor of, cutting services to schools, those who work directly with students. But have we considered doing an audit of, some of the positions to see whether or not some jobs can be combined, especially as, and I would say this, as, folks retire. What's the thinking about that? Do you have any ideas about that, Dan? As we go forward to look at the budget for 2022?
Yeah, we're being very careful, as careful as we can be right now with filling positions. If there's resources in the budget, the fiscal year 21 budget, and we expect that there will be resources next year, we're allowing those some of those hires to move forward. If there's any new requirement for a position, if something comes up that was not anticipated, that those positions are being debated, each one by the cabinet at the weekly cabinet meetings, and then coming to a consensus if we were going to fill those positions, knowing that we'd have to take a cut somewhere else among staffing. So we'd have to not fill a different vacancy. So the thoughts are there. I'm not aware of any direct studies or analysis done by changing job positions or combining jobs from people who are retiring. It's very interesting. And I will bring that up with Helen Nixon and see what can be done. But that's something I had never thought of. And I think that's something that has to be considered, Ms. Dixon.
Right. Thank you. And, I, won't be here after November 30th, but I really do think that this is something that the board really does need to have a look at, whether they, do that through resolution. Prefer not to. Would prefer to have, administration willingly go ahead and take a look. But I don't know that we've done. Well, we haven't, I don't think, done that in the 4 years I've been on the board. And I don't know, when the last time was that we looked at, the positions. But and I do have some views about that, just on the basis of what I've seen and, in the 4 years and, what I've seen in terms of, the jobs in the central office that, seem to be, well paid. But, I'm wondering, whether they all are. And don't get me wrong, there are certainly folks in the central office who work very, very hard. And overtime and things like that. But I do think that there are some jobs there that, are not necessarily 8-hour a day jobs, and that there could be some combining. And given the financial situation that, we admit looks a little dire, I think as we have attrition in employees, it really would be fiscally responsible, to take a look at, whether we can combine some positions, or, whether those positions are even, necessarily needed. And, how are they impacting schools and the education of our students? So, I just throw that out there for some thought. Okay.
I just want to comment to that, Jeanette. When we receive the budget documents and the presentation at the board, in the past, we've always received, item chapter by chapter, whether it was the chief academic officer, and, they go through the staffing in each office. Well, it's not an audit. They do look, and, there's been an eye toward reallocating some of those positions, whether it's an administrative services manager or a director's position, and it's been toward, possibly funding positions somewhere else, whether it's central office or in the schools. I think that what's going to happen is, as grim as these numbers are, there's going to be a target, and that each office is going to be charged with making recommended reductions to the board, because certainly it's not going to be business as usual next year, or even until the next year. And, servicing schools and students has to be the number one priority. And, and I mean, that's the real reality. The most of the money is in the schools with the staffing, and, actually the number of buses, et cetera, is, a smaller amount. I mean, 90% of our budget is salaries and benefits. And right. Certainly the central office positions are going to have to be bare bone, and they're going to have to take a scalpel to every one of those offices, because there is no way we're going to be able to maintain how we're doing things centrally with these projections. So, I can picture it in my mind, the budget documents as we go through our work sessions. There's this number in this office, and I think that an external audit isn't going to solve it, because I don't know necessarily.
No, I don't know that it needs to be external. I think it needs to be done by, the folks within the office. Yeah,
that's the reality. It's going to have to be, and there will have to be a scalpel taken to positions in the central office, not an axe, but a scalpel, because there's no way we're going to be able to maximize what we do in schools without doing that reduction.
Great. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'll leave it to you to lead that charge, as go about looking at the budget for 2022. I think that's very important, so good. I'm glad we're in agreement. Okay, Dan, do we want to move on to the next item?
Yes, Ms. Dixon, and we can take
5.2, fiscal year 2022, the operating budget process.
Yes, and we can take care of this item very quickly, I believe. the two dates that are most relevant right now are we have developed a message and we're going to send it out to our outside stakeholders and inside stakeholders for our budget advisory committee in the next day or two. We hope to have our first meeting of the budget advisory committee next week where we can get input.
Dan, what does that committee consist of? Who does it consist of?
It includes the association, some internal directors and executives. It includes our partners with some of the private sector people we work with, the Black and Brown Coalition and such. And it's a nice cross across of all the people who have an interest in how the budget eventually becomes formulated. And we did it last year and thought it was very effective. We're going to try to change the approach slightly last year because last year was very much of an educational type presentation where we went through chapter by chapter to explain to our partners what each chapter contained. This year, we're going to assume a lot of that knowledge has been retained, and we're going to talk about more about ideas on what we think the needs are going forward with offsetting reductions. And we need to make sure that at the very best, we stay flat next year. That's very unexpected. So we need to come up with what we think is important and what we think is less important and prioritize and determine some of these areas where we can take cuts next year that we could propose to the Board of Education. So that group is going to have input also on some of the thinking there. We want to hear what their thoughts are before we send the budget. And this is the second date. The superintendent's budget is right now scheduled to be delivered to the Board of Education on December 3rd. So it's going to be a very tight turnaround, about 2 months, but that's our goal.
Yeah. So how often does the budget advisory committee meet?
We're scheduling 3 meetings this year of about 2 hours each meeting, which is why we don't want to spend a lot of time on just the basics that we've gone over in the past.
Okay. And have you had any meetings yet?
No, the kickoff we think is scheduled. We have it scheduled for next week. We got a couple of details to work out, and the invitations are going out today or tomorrow. And we have the list of people we're inviting, and they expect to be invited. So,
okay, could we get a copy of that? Who we're inviting and who is working on that? I really do think it's appropriate for the Fiscal Management Committee to have that information.
Absolutely, Mr. Klausing will send it right after this meeting.
Thank you.
If who we're going to invite.
I think
those are the 2 dates.
It would be useful to all board members. And,
right.
And the other thing that I have to throw out there is not only how we maintain things, but, with an eye toward how we're going to overcome the learning loss during this COVID period. Because certainly when we do come back into brick and mortar, I mean, I think that we will have to provide additional supports for many of our students.
Okay. And the rest of the dates on here are just the target dates, due dates to the council. So it's nothing more than just a list of dates that we can go over if you'd like. But I think in the short term, the most 2 important are the advisory committee starting next week and the December 3rd date.
Okay. So what are the plans for involving the board in sharing what its priorities might be? So one of the things you just heard Pat mention is, what she feels we need to do in terms of the learning loss. How do you plan to get that information from us?
Being this is my first year, I'm going to please respectfully ask the question in a different way, maybe. From what I've seen, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is the superintendent proposes a budget that you guys then react to and send back your comments and changes. Are you asking that you want to have stuff included in the superintendent's initial budget before we send to you so that the changes don't occur afterward? I'm not sure exactly how the process works.
Well, I think that there has been some, some efforts to, gauge what our thinking is, about it. Certainly, he does a presentation. We have in the past been, talked with individually by the chief of staff. But I do think that it's important that, the ideas that the board has should be shared. We're not saying, specifics of it, but, for example, the piece that Pat just mentioned about, dealing with the learning loss. I think you all should have that information as you go about your work.
I concur.
And actually, off and on through various superintendents, and I'm hearkening back to Josh Starr as our superintendent, there was a process at various times where, in August, the board developed a system of priority. Well, we didn't call them priorities, but board interests. And, I know we're now into late September, but I do think, the board's chief of staff and board officers should schedule, working with the superintendent, a public discussion, because I think, it's one thing for each board member to put up a laundry list, but I think collectively the board should, right, prior to the superintendent releasing his budget, at least have some thinking of the board. What are our priorities? Like for me, it's going to be sort of maintaining and not losing ground in our schools, and also recognizing that there has been learning loss, no doubt about it. And, that has to be, for me, I'm not thinking about adding, bells and whistles to the budget right now. I'm a practical person, and I think we have to stay focused on a handful of things that are essential that we don't want to cut. And I think it requires the full board, because it's fine to have the stakeholders involved in the development, but it is the board's responsibility to advocate with our other elected leaders that budget going forward. And we need to collectively give that guidance to this work group. And I think this year, with the troubling fiscal time, is even more important for us to collectively come together.
Right. So I will say that I agree with you, Pat, 100%, and very diplomatically said as well. I tend to be, very blunt, in terms of, what my thinking is. But essentially, I've been asking you these questions because I do think that the board should have more input, as we're going about developing the budget. And I think, as Pat stated, that it's a collaborative process, and, that you all have some indication about what our thinking is really very important. And, we certainly stand ready to work, with you on this. And so thank you, Pat, for that. Okay. Judy,
I just wanted to say that this is a conversation that we should have with the superintendent to begin with, because
yes,
they take the direction from there.
Right. But I think, as the Fiscal Management Committee, part of our job is obviously to look at the budget and, how it's being developed, as well. And I, have no doubt that, we'll have that conversation with the superintendent as well.
I do believe
bring that forward.
I mean, I think that possibly a memo to our colleagues and to the superintendent stating that that is a recommendation from the Fiscal Management Committee. And certainly Ms. Webb has heard and Ms. Suskin have heard our conversation, and Mr. Morella will convey it. But I do believe it's of utmost importance and it be done quickly, and we should codify that in a very brief memo that this is a recommendation from the Fiscal Management Committee.
Great. Yeah, we certainly can do that. Judy, you okay with that? On board with that?
Yeah, I was just concerned that we're going to Mr. Morella and saying, well, what kinds of things we want to know about the budget. And I do think it should start with the superintendent, and our colleagues should know. And I think Pat gave a good suggestion that it should come from the Fiscal Management Committee.
Right. Okay. We'll definitely do that. Okay. Great. Anything else, Dan, for the good of the order on that? Or
no, I think we covered the important stuff.
Okay.
I think,
very good.
I think we can cover the important dates. We'll be in touch.
Okay. You want to just go over those very quickly, just so the public knows? Put your chart back up again in terms of the presentation.
Who's controlling the master slides? Is that you, Dan?
There you go.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Yeah, so I think it's noteworthy that the December 3rd date is the presentation of the FY. I think that should be, is that the 2022?
Yes, that's a typo.
Right.
I apologize. Yep.
Budget. Yeah. And on that day, the new officers of the Board of Education will be elected as well. And of course, anyone who is elected to the board on November 3rd would be seated then as well. Okay. And then in December, you have the sign up for the public hearings. And then the operating budget hearings on January 11th and 19th, 2021. Then the board will have 3 work sessions. And then tentative adoption on February 9th. The county executive will release his budget March 15th. The county council will have hearings April and May. And the county council's action May 20th, 2021. And the final adoption June 10th, 2021. So it's very involved in a long process, but a very important one. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. So we are ready for item 5.3, identifying waste, fraud, and abuse in MCPS.
Okay, so board members, I know that you know that I have a keen interest in this topic. In my past life, I spent time as a Deputy Inspector General and lived this and see the benefit of this. You know that I also spent time on the other side of the aisle as a Deputy CFO and have felt the push and pull of the work of the auditors and investigators with the Finance Program Office. And after I spent some time doing the audit side of the house, I came to appreciate the help that this work really is. And it's not a gotcha mentality where a lot of organizations shy away from their oversight. I think at MCPS, we're in the beginning stages of creating something that's going to be pretty special and very helpful. So from what I'm thinking and from what I've presented to other members of the SLT. The way I like to refer to this is not so much waste, fraud, and prevention abuse presentation. I haven't seen direct waste, fraud, or abuse. I've seen items where I think that we have issues of internal control. I think we have places where our internal controls could be stronger. And I think we have areas where I think we don't have internal controls in place that I believe are necessary to run an organization this size with a $2.8 billion budget. So what I'm going to do here is just go quickly through how I envision internal controls moving forward in a couple of steps that we discussed this last week at SLT, and a couple of steps that we're going to move forward with in the very, very near future, including Mr. Klausing right there as the lead of a lot of this efforts. So Tom's been going through a lot of information online. He's been looking at a lot of the federal government A123 Green Book stuff, which is a really good basis for what we want to do. And he's cramming that wonderful head with all kinds of internal controls. So he will be our guy. Basically, the purpose of internal controls are very simple. It's to protect assets, maintain reliability, ensure compliance with law and regulation. One of the most important, and this is also often overlooked, is to promote efficient operations. It's not just legal or illegal, right or wrong. There's a real level of efficiency when you have the proper internal controls in place. It increases and improves your efficiencies tremendously. And then you have to have objectives. We have to know what our goals and objectives are as a school system, and these internal controls need to help get us there. If we want to have a goal of something with all the schools, we need to have internal controls that make sure that our efforts, our work, and our interests points us in the direction of our ultimate goal, not something we did 3 years ago and is no longer relevant. That internal control loses its priority, and the new internal control would take over the resources and time and effort to do that. And that's just something I think it's really a great management tool. It's not just a gotcha. It's really something that people, if taken seriously and understand where the shortcomings or change of direction are, and help direct these internal controls to the operations and implement them, you really do have a better run organization. And I think that's something I'm really passionate about. There's three kinds of internal controls. The first is your detective. That's where you go in, and if there's an audit finding, you go ahead and identify it and bring it forward. The second kind is the preventative. Once you get your system in good place, the preventatives are the ones that are really important so that we don't drift off. Once we have really solid internal control processes in place and metrics and measures, we want to make sure we keep that program fresh, new, and prioritized. So that's where your preventatives would come in. And then you have the actual corrective action, as MJ does with her audits with the corrective action plans. If we find something unexpected within an audit or a internal control review that Tom is going to lead, we need to have not just identify it, that's fine, but what are you going to do about it to fix it so that we're a more efficient school system? So that's really where the rubber hits the road. What are you going to do about this? So I have a list of items that I'm going to put on an agenda for Mr. Klausing to start looking at, put together a timeline. In addition to Mr. Klausing, Mr. Riley is going to participate on this team, and I'm still recruiting a few other individuals. What this is going to be, that we're going to call them control assessment teams, internal control assessment teams, where there'll be 3 or 4 people who have a topic. They'll go out, do an assessment to see if what we're doing is the most efficient, effective, and lawful way of doing something. And then if it's not, they're going to come up with recommendations on how we can improve what we're doing, what our processes are, and what our outcomes as a school system are. So that's where Tom is cramming right now to get a lot of information. I am setting him up with people I know from the federal government who have done this for years, who will be a very terrific asset to Mr. Klausing. And I think right now I am reporting back to the board, to the cabinet monthly on our progress on this process. So Tom is going to be very busy with this, along with Rob's help and whoever else we can get. Down the road, when this is established and we're feeling pretty good about what we're doing, we're going to start considering putting together a MCPS Risk Management Council. That's where you get a global system-wide look, and you put in places. First, you identify future risks that you may think are coming our way, such as a terrible budget season. You put it down, you come up with your mitigating strategies if this risk comes to fruition, and then you prioritize highest to lowest what these risks are for a school system, and then you determine what your risk appetite is. If this were to happen, and this is how you prioritize. If this happens, can you stomach this happening or not? I know that like IT system crashes, like our friends in Fairfax County are going through right now. That's a real high priority for a risk, I think. Reduced budgets, a real high priority for risk. There's a number of these things where we have to determine how much appetite we have for this risk. We need to prioritize them, and we need to absolutely plan. If this were to occur, this is what we would do immediately, and have that plan in place versus waiting for the disaster, study the disaster, and then go ahead and come up with a mitigating plan. So we would save tremendous time when we have to face one of these situations. If they were to occur, hopefully they wouldn't, but they do. And I've been in these committees where we had disasters with systems going down. We've had a disaster once with a reorganization where a number of people were being taken away from my agency, sent to another agency, and the funding was going to go away, but the funding is going to impact the rest of my agency. So we had like 800 people at risk, and we had a mitigating strategy, financing strategy in place that we were able to save like 800 jobs. And this is just my vision for what we're going to do going forward. I've only had very brief discussions with the SLT and cabinet, and this is down the road after Tom gets his process up and running and working. But I just wanted to point out that's something that we're hopefully going to move forward sooner than later. And the last thing is, like I mentioned, we're going to continue to have communication with the SLT and cabinet. I think we can do these things, but if people don't know what we're doing and the impacts and the plans and the strategies, they don't have a lot of shelf life. So it's my responsibility to keep these things living and breathing and moving and going forward. And it's a dynamic process. It's going to change with the wind and with everything we're facing. They're going to change continually. That's my vision for the waste, fraud, and abuse. I just wanted to transition into internal control discussion, which will cover the waste, fraud, and abuse issues. Thank you.
I muted myself because George, the dog, was barking and I didn't know whether you could hear him. But any comments, Pat, Judy, for Dan?
I'm trying to unmute. No, I think it's always prudent to take a careful look. We are spending taxpayer dollars. And if ever there was a time that we need savings, we're going to be having to put MCPS on the diet. So any of those areas that can be available for savings, and certainly, if there is waste, that money needs to be redirected to appropriate uses.
Okay. Judy?
I just think looking forward and considering risk management is very, very important for us to do, especially now since we're concerned about revenues from the state and from our county council.
Right. So, Dan, I would just say to you that I applaud your efforts. And, as someone who feels very strongly that, our schools and students should have and teachers should have everything they need to deliver an outstanding educational program. I'm very much in favor of that, but I also don't like to waste money. And with my own money, I know where every penny is pretty much, and I do pick up pennies on the street. There's a big joke about that. But anyway, thank you for your using your initiative with this and your experience. And, I'll look forward, from a distance at seeing how that all goes and everything. So thank you very much for sharing that today.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And we are now, we're a little over our time, but we are ready for 6.2, the internal audit work plan for fiscal year 2021. MJ?
Yes, I just waiting for Dan to get the slides up. Thank you. So I'm just going to go over the audit work plan that we have envisioned for fiscal 2021. Then we'll go to the first slide. So it just kind of goes into the types of audits that we conduct. We do the independent activity funds. As you know, we look at elementary schools every 3 years, middle schools every 18, and high schools every year. Our plan is to include 118 schools, and 19 of those are to receive new principals, which we have to do an audit. We'll look at the CIF account. And again, we already talked about what we have in that. We look at payroll, which I already sort of discussed. We go into 4 pay periods and we look at the procedures and make sure everything's being done in compliance. We look at the transportation audit for the 5 bus depots. We try to do cafeteria audits. We were going to start that in the spring, but with COVID, we did not. So we're hoping that possibly next spring we can pick up cafeteria audits once again. And again, we do the cell tower audit that we talked about and student parking. So those are the types of audits that we conduct. And then we do investigations and other activities. And that includes some supervisory channels, which we had 2. And then the anonymous hotline, which we had 14. We do the external audit contract and review the MCPS financial statements. We work with the auditors from the Maryland State Department of Education and the Office of Legislative Audit. We give advice and assistance to schools. We probably get more than 100 emails and phone calls a week, just various questions and things that they need help with. And we always tell them it's better to reach out now and ask than to wait for an audit. Again, we work with the school finance training and the SFO school finance online training. And I then prepare the spreadsheet for the comprehensive annual financial report, which is all of the IAF information for every single school. And at the end of every year, we take every school and re-roll them in our SFO software program from one school year into the new fiscal year so they can start again. So those are some of the different things that we do in audit. And the next slide, just briefly, we'll go over the repeat findings because I know that this is something that the board's been very interested in. Procurement processes and procedures are usually our number one, and that goes from people not getting things pre-approved, invoices not being marked that they received the items, maybe not having proper documentation attached. We have cash handling procedures. We have staff who don't bring money to the financial agent every day. We also have some financial agents that hold money over the allowable amounts. If they do not have a safe, we only allow them to hold $50. If they do have a safe, they can hold up to $250, but never over a weekend, holiday, or end of the month. So every Friday, all funds in the school must get put into the bank. We have issues with field trips where we don't get a final field trip accounting. Not all the students are on the list to show whether they paid, didn't pay, were they waived, did they not go? And then those records need to be turned in so the financial agent can reconcile the field trip. And that's one of our biggest things is people aren't reconciling. We want to make sure, how did the field trip do? Did we lose money? Did we have too much money? Did we price it wrong? Did we make sure that all the money that the teachers collected got remitted? So those are important field trip things, and we do see a lot of issues with that. The last one is monthly reports and financial monitoring. Could be anywhere from using the wrong accounts, principals not reviewing the monthly reports timely, sponsors not reviewing their monthly reports timely, which is a big internal control. sponsors are to get a report every month showing everything that happened in their account. And then they check that with their records to make sure that everything they turned in got credited to the proper account and everything matches. That's a check and balance and an internal control that's very strong. So we want to make sure that that's done, and we do have some issues with that. The next slide. These are slides that these are the audits that we did, and the red is the findings and the blue is the repeat. And you can see with elementary schools, we do have a lot of repeats, and I feel that could be because there's a 3-year break from when we come in. So we're going to address that this year in our plan to possibly go back on a more regular basis, or go into some of these schools that have a lot of findings and repeats and kind of just look at what they are doing with the issues that they had. The next slide is middle school. And you can see an enormous difference. We had several middle schools that had no findings at all. We had some that had quite a bit, and some that they did have a lot of findings, but they weren't repeats. So maybe new things came up, or we had new staff. Sometimes when we have staff turn around, we have new issues. But I was happy to see that we had quite a few middle schools that had no findings at all. The next slide is high schools. And again, we did not get to as many high schools as we would have liked to have gotten to due to COVID. There was just no way that we could do a high school remotely. We did a couple elementary schools remotely, but a high school, there's just way too much information to look at. But as you can see, we had quite a few that had no findings or a few findings. So, and I do think that is because we do go in every year. And if you're constantly going in every year and helping these schools, then we're helping them with their internal controls and their processes. And I do see, and we obviously are always going to have a few schools that have some issues, and we are going to focus on those schools, this year to really get out there and help them. So any questions on repeat findings before we move on to the other slides?
Yeah, I have a question. Repeat means that you go back in after you've told them, these are my findings, and find out whether they've corrected them or not?
Yeah, so an example would be, we would do a school and pre-approval of purchases was a finding, and the next year we went back, it's still a finding. And I do look at the action plans, and we've been trying to address that in the audit reports to make it very clear that we came in before, we told you that this was an issue. In your action plan, you said you were going to do this, but we still found you have not. And so hopefully they'll work with their directors a little bit more to really get some processes in place to address the issues and not have them repeat anymore. But yes, that is what repeat means.
Thank you.
Okay, we can go to the next slide if there's no more questions. Just briefly, the process for reporting the audit findings. Right now, the school audit report includes a notice of findings and recommendations, and we do indicate if it was a repeat in the bullet section. The school has 30 days to reply to our unit with a detailed action plan, but we first want them to work with their director to go over the action plan, and then the Board of Education and select staff receive an electronic copy of the audit report, and then we do publish the school's action plan and report on the school website and the Board of Education website. So in additions to current process, like I discussed before, we're going to try to do more interim reviews to look at their corrective actions and see if they've corrected everything. And if elementary schools with multiple findings, we are going to try to go in every 2 years instead of every 3 years. And we may do a reduced audit just to kind of look at the repeat findings to see how we can help them and make sure they're on the right track. Any questions on the audit findings and processes? Okay. The next slide. Well, that was it. That was all I had for the plan. I just tried to go through it. I know we're over time, so. Great. Any questions at all?
Pat, Judy, any questions? No, I don't have any either. Thank you very much, MJ. And we are now on item 7.1. That's the board expenditures report for fiscal year 2020. And I just wanted to note, I think that obviously we have had fewer expenses because of COVID-19, but and the public can see this report as well, but the categories are for consultant. By the way, this is for 8 board members, our chief of staff, legislative assistant, and also Robin Seabrook, who works with us on appeals, and Danielle Suskin, who works with the General Assembly. And we have an administrative services manager, and then 2 other secretaries as well. So it's quite a few people, and I've decided that we really are a bargain. But anyway, so in terms of the consultant, we have expenses for consultant, office supplies, mileage, out of area travel, dues, registrations, and fees, and books and subscriptions. And that is essentially it. The expenditures for the quarter are, to date, $19,500. And the rest, the public can go in and take a look. But I think that we certainly are way under what those expenses generally are. So we're now on 8, new business and final comments. Any new business from my colleagues? Pat, Judy? No new business, no final comments? You're good? Okay, so if I could just summarize what we'd like to follow up with. Our next meeting is November 16th at 10 a.m. And we agreed that Ms. Webb would look into the issue of the pensions and, whether we did the right thing in terms of having the board vote on that before it came back to the Fiscal Management Committee. That on November 16th, we would have a discussion or report about why we need to save $25 million going forward and why we do these savings. It's an education issue for us on the board and also for the public. We are going to hopefully continue to look at opportunities to increase the interest that the CIF, Central Investment Fund, earns. We will draft a memo to the superintendent about board and collaboration on the budget, the 2022 budget. And then also a request to have the IAF report, which is a public document shared with all principals. Anything else for the good of the order? No? Okay. Then our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're about a half hour over, but I think it's useful. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Okay, have a great rest of the day.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.